All right, so this Knife Thoughts video is going to be a review of not one, not two, but three QSP knives. And these are all bird name knives. That's kind of QSP's thing, it seems. So a flock of knives here to review. First of all, this one that I've had the longest was a gift from my friend Dan. So thanks to Dan for that. And then I got the Hawk here from Traditional Pocket Knives, and finally the Osprey from White Mountain Knives. You can get QSPs from Traditional Pocket Knives. You can also get them from White Mountain Knives. And I do have a discount code at White Mountain Knives. Knife Thoughts gets you 10% off. So keep that in mind. But anyway, I wanted to do these together just because I haven't done any videos as far as I can recall on QSP knives, and I've been interested in them because, first of all, it's another budget brand, Chinese or foreign budget brand, and they are doing great things, a lot of these Chinese budget brands. Specifically, if you watch my channel, you know that I really like Civivi, and there are other brands like Wee and Sencut. And there are other, budget Chinese brands that are making really good knives for the money. And I see a lot of discussion on QSP, so I wanted to check them out. Also, QSP does do some OEM for some American-based or USA-based knife designers. So I wanted to check out the quality of the QSP branded knives, just so that I was aware of that if I was going to buy a knife made or manufactured by QSP that is from a USA designer. But I'm going to do these in the order that I got them here. So first of all, the Parrot. This is the smallest of these, and it has D2 blade steel, if I can get this out here, and green micarta handles. And the micarta on this, to be honest, the first thing I noticed is that it's a little bit of like a pea soup green. It's not as dark as a lot of green micarta is. It's a little lighter, and honestly isn't the best looking green micarta that I've seen. Again, it's kind of a limey pea colored green, as in like what are peas? Legumes? Anyway, the thing you eat. And so, not the best look to the micarta, but it's a very nice little simple design. This knife, I'm sure that my friend Dan, I don't know, he might have disassembled it, definitely, adjusted it, because he is a big fan of disassembling and adjusting knives. So I'm sure that it was, but it's pretty smooth. Not exactly drop close smooth, as you can see, but opening, it's very smooth. And then the design itself is really, really simple. And you know that I like a simple design. I think a simple blade shape tends to be very practical, and a simple handle tends to be very ergonomic. And that's the case here. You can see it basically has a straight back the whole way across the spine and handle. Little finger groove here, and then a grip, and it actually fits really well in my hand despite being small. This turn here goes into the palm of my hand. My pinky does fit. I get a full 4-finger grip on this little knife. And then moving on to the blade, it is kind of a spear point, kind of a drop point. Either way, a pretty classic shape to it. Has a full grind here and seems to be ground relatively well also. I have done some cutting with it, and it seems to slice pretty well. The lockup, it is a liner lock. You can see that it locks up pretty normally, 30%, something like that. I, don't feel any lock rock, and when unlocked, no blade play. Again, Dan might have adjusted this one, but it is just kind of a simple, classic knife, and it is, I believe, the cheapest of these three also. So I like D2 steel. I certainly don't mind D2. So I think that this one is a great value, especially if you get, they have a blue version. I'd like to get the blue version of this, actually, because the blue micarta that QSP does looks really nice. But anyway, I think that this is a great little, simple EDC knife. Very good EDC size for a lot of people, and will work well for almost all normal EDC tasks. So really, aside from that kind of not so great looking color of the green micarta, I'm a big fan of the Parrot. So moving on to the next one that I got, which is the Hawk. And a part of the reason why I got this one is I actually didn't realize that the Parrot was a gift at the time. I thought that I just had it for review, and I wanted to kind of try and put to use one of these QSP knives. Also, I was ordering another knife from Traditional Pocket Knives, and I wanted to get this because it has ebony wood handles. So this one has 14C 28N blade steel and then an ebony wood handle, which is pretty unusual for a modern knife and pretty cool. I actually realized in getting this that I don't have an ebony handled traditional knife, which I will have to rectify. There's actually a really cool looking, in my opinion, gradation cutlery knife coming out. It's on the 36 frame. It's going to have an elephant head shield and a sheet foot blade, and they're doing it in ebony as one of the options. Now, I did an unboxing video of this, and I was really happy with it in the unboxing. And it's funny, you know, some unboxings recently I haven't, you know, had the best luck. I was really happy with it in the unboxing. Since then, I have found that I do have my finger slip off of this flipper. Not all the time, but relatively frequently. You can see that wasn't intentional. I'm sure it probably seems like it was, being that I was talking about it, but that wasn't intentional. You do have to really press down into this. And again, I think that it's because of the angle here. This section is of no use. When it's open, you're not going to, I mean, maybe you'll put your finger on that, but I wouldn't. And when it's closed, you can't push into that to flip it. So there's really no reason for this jimping. This section should be longer and or angled downward more, and you would be able to get a better purchase on it. So the flipper could be designed better. It's one thing, I talked about that in my review of the Asher Knife Spiro flipper recently. It's something that I think, you know, is worth making sure that you get right on a knife design, because it can be really frustrating, and I'm not going to have it again, of course, but it can be really frustrating if you slip off the knife. I find that it happens more often when you take the knife out of your pocket and just go to, you know, open it for use and are not like thinking about it like I am right now, and can, you know, keep doing it the same way and stuff like that. Now, that said, it does have thumb studs, so you can certainly use the thumb studs, and there's no issue with that. And it also seems to be ground, again, relatively thin. I do like this blade shape a lot. Again, it's pretty simple, classic drop point style blade. And the handle feels pretty ergonomic. It is relatively thick, actually, but in this case, because it has some, you know, grinding here to create kind of a finger groove, it does feel pretty good in the hand. So this is a really nice knife, especially if you want an ebony handled modern knife. There aren't a whole lot of options out there. In fact, there are very few options. So this might still be a great option for that. I just do think that this flipper tab specifically could be designed better. So, you know, take that however you want to. This knife is a little bit more expensive at about $58, I think, something like that. So, you know, a little more expensive than the Parrot, which is in the $30 range, I believe. And I do still think that it's a good knife for that price, but I wish that they had changed or had made this flipper tab a little bit more intentionally designed. I think that that's something that you want to get right on a knife. So speaking of that, kind of, and moving on to the last of these three QSP knives, this is the Osprey. And this one also has a 14C28N blade, but this one has a copper handle, and that's a big reason why I decided to get this one. So again, because of the handle. But another reason was because this actually came out like a day or two, something like that, after I hadn't seen about it previously. That like I didn't know that it was coming out, but it came out like a day or two after I ordered the Hawk, and it looked a little bit more like the type of knife I like, nice and slender, and even more simple in design. Plus, I've always kind of wanted to have a copper handled knife. I checked out some of the Rough Rider copper handled modern knives and wasn't really a fan of them, but I've always wanted to have one. Kind of like to have a flashlight to go with it. So I want to check this out. I do like the milling that it has here for this checkered pattern and then kind of a bolster look to it here with this line. And it does have a nice simple shape, as you can see. Now, the flipper is much better designed on this one, and I'll tell you why here. So first of all, you can see that angle, and I'll show you it compared to the Hawk. The angle is slightly, but more downward on the Osprey than on the Hawk. But two things that are even more important here is that this flipper tab is just a little bit longer. And it's not going to hurt anything when you open this knife. You know, it's not like the flipper is exceedingly long, sticking out or anything like that. But just enough that it makes it, you know, easier to get to. And then finally, if you look at this corner here, this corner blocks your finger. So if you hit here first, you can very easily not, you know, just kind of bounce off of that flipper tab. Whereas on the Osprey, it has this cutoff. So your finger sits really well. It's good for indexing too, and makes it easy to flip. Now, this knife has kind of a cool like bullnose, or not bullnose, bull sodbuster. Bullnose is GEC's version of the sodbuster. A sodbuster type look to it, in my opinion, because of the simple curved handle shape and then the very slight drop point blade shape with a relatively abrupt belly. I do like the look of this blade and handle design, and I think that it'll be really practical also. You can, you know, use this type of blade for pretty much any cutting, and the handle is pretty comfortable. Now, there's one point on the handle that, again, I think could have been designed a little differently, and that's this lanyard hole. First of all, sometimes I use a lanyard on a knife, very infrequently, but on something like this, where I'd like to have it be able to like be attached to my wrist, or something like this, where it just helps to get it out of the pocket and goes with the aesthetic, basically. I think most knife lanyards are mostly aesthetic based. But those are the only two knives, folding knives, that I have lanyards on. And I would much rather this handle just had kind of like an extension between here. Because if it did, I could just grind this big corner off and, you know, be good to go. Maybe if it had something like this cut off on this side, but over here. But because it has this corner, I think if I ground this, you know, lanyard hole off, it might not really help the ergonomics. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this one to use, and I'm going to see if that bothers me in use. I have trouble telling just from holding on to it without much, you know, extensive use, whether that will be an issue. But I do think it's something to be aware of. This sticks out way more than it needs to and is a poor design choice. There's really no need for it to stick out that much. They could, even if they wanted to have a lanyard hole, which again, I'd rather it didn't have one, but if they really wanted to have a lanyard hole, they could have just moved this hole upward slightly. There's space for it there, as you can tell, and had this not stick downward so much here, this corner, this rounded kind of corner here. So it's a little unfortunate because I think without that lanyard hole, that micarta, and by the way, that's micarta. So interesting choice there. That's like a black micarta, but without this lanyard hole extension on the backspacer, this would be a really good knife. This one is a little more expensive because of the copper. The micarta handled versions of this knife are about the same range as the Hawk. They're in the $60 range, 63 maybe. This one was 68, something like that, or maybe they're like 58 and this was 63. Basically in the $60 range though. And I think for that price, being a copper handled knife, you know, you're getting a good deal. There's certainly no construction issues. This one, again, flips well, very smooth with the ball bearings. Neither of these came with any blade play or edge damage, and lock up very solidly and are well centered. This one is very close to perfect, and the Hawk is also very close to perfect. So neither of these really have any manufacturing issues. It's just that each has kind of one design imperfection that keeps it from being great. And honestly, to give a comparison, in comparison to a lot of Civivis. Now, that's not to say that some Civivis don't have design issues that keep them from being great. For example, the Kiwi I did a review on. I think the flipper should have been designed differently on it, but a lot of Civivis just don't have those slight design issues. So I'm interested to see how QSP goes forward, if they work on getting those small design things better, or if maybe, it's something where I'm the only one that cares about those types of things. But I like to mention them in my videos because that's what it is, right? It's my opinions on these knives, and I do think that this lanyard hole extension of the backspacer could be smaller, and the flipper tab on the Hawk could be bigger. And really, no complaints design-wise on the Parrot. I just don't think that's the best looking green micarta in the world. But I hope you've enjoyed this video on a flock of QSP knives, the Parrot, Hawk, and Osprey. If you have, make sure you give it the thumbs up. You can also subscribe to the channel and click the bell. Also, make sure you select all so you know when I post new videos. Check out my social media. I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Knife Thoughts, and my website, knifethoughts.com, where I post articles on knives like this and knife-related topics. And last but not least, as always, don't forget to go out and do good.